Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for what might be the most radical, most restrictive dietary shift that's making waves right now. We're talking about a journey into alimentary minimalism pushed to its absolute extreme. We are talking about the lion diet.
That's where the deep dive is taking us. And our listener provided a fascinating stack of sources here. It covers everything from 18th century medical history all the way to cutting-edge immunological theory.
So what's our mission here? What are we trying to unpack?
Our mission is really to get at the zero-variable philosophy of the lion diet, specifically its use as a therapeutic elimination protocol. We're not looking at this as a standard diet for everyone.
Yeah.
We're investigating why people with these treatment-resistant autoimmune conditions, severe GI issues, and even mood disorders believe this extreme restriction is for them the only way forward.
Okay, we have to define this precisely from the get-go, because this is where the lion diet, or LD, really splits off from the broader carnivore approach.
It's a critical distinction.
When we say lion diet, we mean exclusively meat from ruminant animals. So think cattle, sheep, goat, bison, elk, deer.
Right.
And that's it. Plus water and simple salt. Only.
Yeah, that strict definition is absolutely key. This is a very, very narrow funnel of food. It strictly prohibits non-ruminant meats like pork and chicken, all seafood, eggs, and crucially, all dairy.
So that level of restriction is the whole point.
That's where its supposed therapeutic power comes from.
It's really easy to just dismiss this as, another modern trend that got blown up on social media. But the sources you found show the conceptual roots run, well, surprisingly deep.
Oh, they absolutely do. These ideas have been poking at medical orthodoxy for centuries. If you rewind to the 19th century, there's this figure, James Salisbury.
Salisbury steak.
The very same. He used a ground beef protocol to treat a whole range of ailments. And his premise was, for the time, completely radical. He believed vegetable matter fermented in the gut and produced toxic byproducts.
So only meat was clean fuel.
That was his argument. He was one of the first provocateurs to really challenge that idea that, plants were universally good for you.
And there was someone even earlier, right?
Yeah, even earlier. The 18th century physician John Rollo, he was using a meat-exclusive diet to manage diabetes. He basically recognized that it just completely eliminated the glycemic volatility you get from starches and sugars.
But the big one, the one that really gave this idea some scientific legs, was the explorer Vilhjalmur Stefansson.
Right, his ethnographic work with the Inuit, that was foundational. He documented, long-term human survival on just meat and fat, and that work led directly to that highly publicized 1928 clinical trial.
The one at Bellevue Hospital.
Yep, a full year. And it proved pretty conclusively that a meat-only diet, as long as it was fatty enough and diverse enough within that category, did not cause scurvy or kidney failure. That gave real scientific weight to the idea.
And so that idea was just sort of lurking in the background for decades until the modern catalyst came along. And we're talking about Mikhaila Peterson.
Her story is what launched the LD into the cultural lexicon. She was suffering from these multisystemic autoimmune crises, severe juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, chronic depression, and she basically used this diet as a last-ditch effort. A radical elimination strategy.
It worked for her.
Her personal story became the template. She only found symptom resolution when she excluded everything but ruminant meat. And then that template got amplified. You had Jordan Peterson talking about mood stabilization, Joe Rogan discussing body composition.
And it blew up.
It moved from a desperate personal experiment into a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
Okay, so if the history sets the stage, let's zoom in on the why of the restriction, because it is extreme. Our sources had a really useful comparison. If the goal is therapeutic, what does the lion diet do that, say, a standard carnivore diet doesn't?
You have to look at the primary focus of each one. So the standard keto diet, its main goal is ketogenesis. It's a metabolic state shift.
Right, dissolve macros.
Exactly. And its antigenic load is moderate. You still have varied proteins, dairy, some low-starch plants.
Then the carnivore diet narrows that down. It focuses on protein and fat bioavailability. You cut all the plants, but you can still have eggs, seafood, pork, chicken. So it's a low energetic load.
But the lion diet pushes that lever all the way down. Its main driver isn't just ketosis, it's immunological sequestration.
Immunological sequestration.
Ruminant meat only. No dairy, no eggs, no chicken. This results in what you'd call a minimal antigenic load.
So that's the key question then. If someone is already just eating beef, they've cut out all plants, why banish the egg whites? Why get rid of the chicken breast? Why is the immune system still reacting?
The core hypothesis, at least among proponents, is that for certain people with these pathological sensitivities, it's not enough to just minimize inflammation. You have to minimize all potential immune triggers.
Every last one.
Every last one. So that means systematically removing the plant metabolites, lectins, oxalates, and specific proteins in non-ruminant products. Things like proteins in egg whites or the different caseins in dairy. That jump from a low antigenic load to a minimal one is about finding that nutritional bottleneck where the immune system can finally just calm down. And to really understand the proposed benefits, we have to start with the central pillar of the whole theory, which is restoring the intestinal barrier.
The gut.
This protocol is explicitly designed to address increased intestinal permeability, or what people commonly call leaky gut syndrome.
Okay, so the goal is sequestration, hiding from the immune system. Then the mechanics have to be about those tight junctions in the gut wall, the security gate.
Precisely. And there's a critical protein that controls those gates, deciding if they're locked tight or loosened up. It's called zonulin.
Zonulin.
The theory is that dietary triggers, gluten is a big one, but also certain microbial antigens cause an over-release of zonulin. This loosens the junctions, and it lets these large, unwanted molecules like LPS, bacterial endotoxins, slip through into the bloodstream.
And that's the trigger. That's what kicks off the chronic inflammation and eventually the autoimmunity through molecular mimicry.
Yes. So the lion diet aims to just remove the stimuli completely. Ruminant meat is considered biocompatible. It's seen as devoid of those zonulin-triggering antigens. The goal is to let the mucosa rest and repair.
And can you measure this?
Well, the sources document that key inflammation markers, specifically calprotectin, which tracks neutrophil migration in the gut, and the pro-inflammatory cytokine TNF-1 are theorized or have been shown to be significantly reduced on this protocol. It's like resetting a really buggy piece of software.
Okay, so moving from the gut up to the brain. Let's talk about mental clarity. This is something you hear all the time from people on the LD, that the chronic brain fog just lifts. And, okay, stable blood sugar from ketosis is probably part of that story. But one piece of biochemical insight from your sources was fascinating. The role of something called sarcosine.
Yes, this is a strong piece of evidence for a direct neurochemical effect. There was a 3-week study that showed a really significant elevation in serum sarcosine, or N-methylglycine. It basically doubled the concentration of this compound in the bloodstream.
Doubled it. So what does doubling your sarcosine actually do for your brain? Is this like meat acting as a natural antidepressant?
It gives you a strong biochemical reason to think so. Sarcosine acts as a glycine transporter 1 inhibitor, which, to put it simply, increases the amount of glycine at the NMDA receptor. This mechanism is crucial for modulating excitatory neurotransmission. And given that modulating this exact pathway is a target for drugs being researched for treatment-resistant depression and schizophrenia,
it suggests the diet itself might be fundamentally altering your brain chemistry in a therapeutically beneficial way.
For some individuals, yes, that's the rationale.
So we've got these intriguing mechanisms. Now let's look at the data. The biggest observational data set we have is that Leonard et al. 2021 Harvard survey. Over 2,000 adults. And while, observational data always needs context, the results were pretty significant.
The sheer volume of user satisfaction alone is noteworthy. 95% reported being satisfied with their health status. And on top of that, the metabolic markers showed huge improvements.
Yeah, we saw a significant median BMI loss. And for patients with diabetes, a reported 84% reduction in their medication use.
And a median 0.4% HbA1c reduction. That's clinically significant.
Right. And the fact that a diet this restrictive has such high tolerability with really low reported adverse symptoms, that says a lot about its success for this particular group.
But what really pushes this conversation beyond just anecdotes are the recent case series. Specifically, the 2024 reports in Frontiers in Nutrition on inflammatory bowel disease patients. Here, the researchers included objective markers.
So not just I feel better. They were measuring things.
Exactly. They were looking at colonoscopy results and fecal calprotectin, which is a non-invasive, measurable biomarker for inflammation in the gut.
Tell us what they found.
Some of it is just striking. You have patient TA who is dealing with ulcerative colitis, and they achieved complete symptom resolution within 48 hours of going meat only.
48 hours.
But the most incredible data point involves patient C6, a 14-year-old boy with Crohn's disease. His calprotectin level, a measure of active gut inflammation, was at an extremely high 4,291.
Wow.
After starting the protocol, that level dropped all the way down to 9.
4,000
Yeah.
down to 9. That is a measurable physiological remission. That's not just subjective relief.
Exactly. This objective data backs up the idea that the benefits are more than just a feeling. It shows the LD can induce measurable mucosal healing, and that has allowed some patients to get off powerful immune-suppressing drugs, including biologics like ustekinumab. Okay, but now we have to get into the high-stakes controversies, and the loudest one is always about cardiovascular health. This diet means a high saturated fat intake, and that often leads to dramatically elevated LDL-C levels.
This is the big red flag for most doctors, right?
Yeah.
You hear about people's LDL just skyrocketing, often way above 200, even 300 milli-GDL.
Which brings us to a specific group of people, the lean mass hyperresponder, or LMHR phenotype. These are typically lean, healthy, insulin-sensitive individuals who, when they aggressively cut carbs, see this extreme spike in their circulating LDL-C.
But here's the paradox. They're metabolically healthy, otherwise high HDL, low triglycerides. So how can we trust preliminary CCTA scan data suggesting they don't have coronary plaque when we have decades of epidemiological evidence linking high LDL to heart disease?
And that is the core conflict. Proponents argue for something called the lipid energy model. The idea is if you are extremely carb restricted, your body relies on mobilizing fat for energy, and it does it fast. So you need a huge fleet of LDL particles circulating as delivery trucks to transport that fat.
So high LDL is a feature, not a bug in that model.
Correct. The LMHR triad is defined by high LDL-C, high HDL-C, and very low triglycerides. And while, yes, some preliminary scans on these people hint at clean arteries, we absolutely cannot ignore the UK Biobank data. That data links low-carb, high-fat patterns to an increased incidence of major adverse cardiovascular events. It's a huge open question.
Okay, let's move to the other big red flag, micronutrients. Specifically, what I call the scurvy paradox. If you cut out all plants, all traditional vitamin C sources, why aren't people getting scurvy?
It comes down to a competitive mechanism that most people just don't realize exists. Yes, fresh muscle meat had trace amounts of vitamin C, and organ meats like beef liver have a decent amount, about 20 milligrams per 3 ounces. But the real answer is in how we process glucose.
The competition for the receptors.
Exactly. Glucose and vitamin C compete for the same GLUT1 transport receptors to get into our cells. So when you dramatically cut or eliminate glucose, the human requirement for vitamin C seems to plummet because there's no more competition for absorption.
So you just don't need as much.
Research suggests the requirement might drop to as low as 10 milligrams a day to prevent scurvy. And that's a dose you can easily get from fresh meat, especially if you're eating any organ meat.
What about other gaps, like calcium or folate?
Those are very legitimate concerns. Since dairy is out, calcium can be low. That means you have to consume bone broth or even bone meal. Folate, or B9, is also pretty scarce, and that means you have to eat liver or kidney. And iodine. Iodine is highly dependent on the animal's feed and the soil, so supplementation is often necessary there to keep the thyroid happy.
And finally, the microbiome dilemma, the complete lack of fiber. I mean, conventional wisdom is that fiber is essential for motility, for producing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. What happens when those fiber-fermenting bacteria just vanish?
The gut ecosystem shifts, and it shifts fast, sometimes within 48 hours. The fiber fermenters, like Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, their numbers just crater. But proponents argue that in cases of chronic inflammation like IBD or SIBO, removing those fermentable fibers essentially starves the pathogenic overgrowth. It gives the gut mucosa a chance to heal without constant irritation.
Okay.
And there's another piece. The high levels of beta-hydroxybutyrate you produce in ketosis might actually fulfill some of the regulatory roles that we normally attribute to gut-derived butyrate. It's a kind of novel mucosal signaling pathway.
Yeah. So after all that, what does this mean for you, the listener, someone who might be curious or maybe suffering from one of these treatment-resistant conditions?
The consensus across all the sources is pretty clear. The Lion diet is best used as a rigorous diagnostic elimination protocol. It's not necessarily a lifelong nutritional plan for the general population. It absolutely has to be used methodically to be useful. The sources lay out a 5-step protocol. First is preparation, where you taper off irritants over a few weeks. Second is the strict elimination phase, which is 30 to 90 days of only ruminant meat, salt, and water.
To get to a baseline.
To get to a symptomatic baseline and let those inflammation markers stabilize. Then you have stabilization, where you monitor objective markers like CRP or calprotectin to confirm you're in remission. And only then do you move to the critical systematic challenge phase.
Where you reintroduce one food group at a time to find your specific triggers.
And that challenge phase is very structured. It's called the rule of threes. You eat one single food, let's say eggs, for all 3 meals in one day. Then you wait for 3 full days, monitoring yourself for any delayed inflammatory reactions before you try the next food.
That methodical structure is what makes it so valuable. It helps you pinpoint your individual safe zone for the long term.
The LD is, without a doubt, a profound departure from standard nutritional guidelines.
But for those people who are suffering from these debilitating treatment-resistant diseases, the extreme action of total sequestration, it can be a really powerful tool for health reclamation. It offers mucosal healing and a way to stabilize that gut-brain axis.
I agree. But we have to stress the medical community's caution is justified. The risks are real. Potential long-term micronutrient gaps, the unknown effects of a fiber-free gut, and that critical cardiovascular uncertainty around the LMHR phenotype. This is a powerful protocol, but it really requires clinical oversight and a very clear, methodical reintroduction strategy to move forward safely.
This has been an incredibly detailed deep dive into an extremely intense topic.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. The core mechanism of the lion diet suggests that the optimal human diet might be less about hitting some predefined macro ratio and more about finding the absolute minimal antigenic load that your individual immune system needs to stabilize. So if low glucose levels naturally lower our vitamin C requirements because of those competitive receptors, what other essential nutrient requirements might be fundamentally redefined for human health in the complete absence of plant competition? That is the foundational and maybe revolutionary question that future research really needs to answer.